So this morning I want to play a video of Israel's UN ambassador, and where he says that Israel is Ukraine's ally and compares Russia to Hamas, and why he said this. But first I want to point out, I'm going to show you this particular article. I'm not going to read the whole article, but you see right here where it says Putin makes direct threat to nuke the West as he accused NATO and the U.S. of preparing to strike Russia in its annual address to the nation, and warns of destruction of civilization. And in this video he's trying to point out how upright, magnificent, and conservative and Christian his country is, and that people need to make more babies, etc., etc. And we go down here, and I will start here. He also told NATO countries that their threats have created a real risk of nuclear war if they send troops to Ukraine, adding that Russia must strengthen its western military district after Finland and Sweden's admission to the Atlantic Alliance, as Finland has a long border with northwest Russia. They should eventually realize that we also have weapons that can hit targets on their territory. Everything that the West comes up with creates the real threat of a conflict with the use of nuclear weapons and thus destruction of civilization, Putin added. The United States and key European allies this week said they had no plan to send ground troops to Ukraine after France hinted at that possibility. Yes, France actually said that there were going to be some NATO countries that were going to send troops on their own into Ukraine. You can Google that and look it up for yourself. He also claimed that the West was trying to drag Russia into an arms race. They are trying to wear us down, to repeat the trick that they succeeded in pulling off with the Soviet Union in the 1980s. Therefore, our task is to develop the defense industrial complex in such a way as to increase scientific technology and industrial potential of the country. We need to distribute resources as rationally as possible and build an efficient economy of the armed forces to achieve the maximum for every ruble of defense expenditures. Now, here's what else he said. In terms of allies, Putin said he believes it is important for Russia to strengthen ties with Arab countries and Latin American countries. I'll get to the Arab countries part in just a minute when I play the video of the Israeli ambassador to the UN. He further hailed Russia's he praised policies from allied countries such as the Belt and Road Initiative in China, a global infrastructure strategy. He further hailed Russian national unity amid the fighting in Ukraine in his State of the Nation address. Ahead of next month's election, he's all but certain to win. And he goes on and on and on. All right, so one might ask, why is this Western Eastern situation happening? Where did that all start? Well, folks, it started here. All right. And I want to show you that there is a very interesting comparison where it says, "And the 10 horns which you saw upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked." Now, everybody knows that the whore is the great city of Rome, right? That is correct. There is, however, one slight problem with the current narrative of the great whore. You see, you have the second Rome. All right. That's on the shores of the Bosphorus, transforming the Greek city of Byzantium into a new Christian capital, Constantinople. Did this Rome have 7 hills? Yes, it did. Look. And there they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right here in this picture. So, just like the first Rome, it's described in the same way as the first Rome. Now, he has 2 horns like this beast out of the earth had 2 horns like a lamb. And remember, these horns are 2 kingdoms. You have the kingdom in original Rome, and you have another kingdom in Constantinople. So, the waters on which you saw the whore sits are peoples and multitudes, nations, tongues, and 10 kings which you saw upon the beast. These shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. Now, so we'll look at the fires of the 4th Crusade in Constantinople. This was somewhere in the middle of 1203 and 1204. Looking back on the fall of Constantinople in 1204, Nicetas Croades declared this was the Constantine's fair city, the common delight and boast of all nations. And that's exactly what is written here. It's when it talks about Rome, okay? The greatest city on earth. Everybody knows that Constantinople is the greatest city on earth in those days. Was laid waste by fire and blackened by soot, taken and emptied of all wealth, public and private, as well as it was consecrated to God, as they say, convinced that Byzantine sins were ultimately to blame for the capital's ruins. Nicetas elsewhere compared the fires which devastated the city before its capture to the flames which destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and judged the former far more drastic. Fire was not an uncommon hazard in a city tightly packed with wooden structures as Constantinople, but no previous blaze could compare with the 3 infernos set by the Latin Crusaders during their protracted stay in the Bosphorus in 1203 and 1204. They were the first of Constantinople's assailants, able to exploit the city's inflammability as a means of conquest. It is the purpose of this study to attempt to describe, map out, and assess the devastation of which the Fourth Crusade's pyrotechnic strategies visited on the great city before its fall. And folks, do you think that the Byzantines ever forgot this? Well, if you're not a Byzantine, if you're not from Russia, if you're not Greek Orthodox, then you don't even give it a second thought. But if you are Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, whether you are a lowly layman or whether you are the man on top, Vladimir Putin himself, you're never going to forget this. All right? And this, folks, is the reason why Russia is so reactionary to the buildup of NATO over the course of the last few decades. Now, enter in Israel's UN ambassador, Gilad Erdan. And this is about a 7-minute and 17-second video. I will play the whole thing, or nearly the whole thing, because I want to impress upon you the fact that while Russia is constantly virtue signaling the virtues of the Russian people, that they are conspiring with the Arabs, with Iran, with Syria, Gaza, and whoever else to undermine Israel. And Israel's UN ambassador's reaction goes like this.
For the past 2 years, Israel has stood alongside the people of Ukraine in solidarity, both on the ground and here in the United Nations. This is the moral thing to do, especially as a country that knows exactly how it feels to be aggressively invaded, to have our towns and cities attacked, and for our civilians to be the targets of indiscriminate missile fire. The State of Israel has always and will continue to remain committed to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Distinguished representatives, Israel has shown its support for Ukraine not only through words, but also through actions. Israel sent more than 100 tons of humanitarian equipment to our Ukrainian allies within 1 week of the Russians' invasion. We also established a field hospital within Ukraine's border, which treated over 7,000 injured. Hundreds of Ukrainian patients have also been treated in hospitals and rehabilitation centers across Israel. From rehabilitation programs to post-traumatic therapy, Ukrainians have received the best possible care that Israel has to offer. Israel is also working to provide Ukraine with early warning systems to save civilian lives from Russia's indiscriminate missile and drone attacks. We were forced to develop an expertise in this field, and we are happy to share our capabilities with our Ukrainian friends in need. Colleagues, 2 years ago, Russia, with disdain for its neighbors' sovereignty and territorial integrity, invaded Ukraine, causing tragic loss of human life and immense damage to civilian infrastructure. 143 days ago, the brutal terror organization of Hamas, in utter violation of international law and also complete disdain for Israel's sovereignty, invaded the Jewish state, murdering, raping, and destroying anything they could lay their hands on. Both of our countries, Ukraine and Israel, are fighting a battle for our survival. We are now living in an era during which forces of instability act with impunity. International law be damned, morality be damned, and peace and security be damned. But today, not only do these forces use military power or terror, but they have another tool. They have converted the UN and its bodies into a weapon against freedom and liberty. This is what the UN has become. Today, the Security Council cannot fulfill its basic mandate to defend sovereign states from invasion or even condemn violence. Whether it comes to combating the aggression that Ukraine defends itself against or the terror that Israel defends itself against. The Security Council is paralyzed in the face of violence, and the entire UN system is being held hostage by political interests. The UN system is being held hostage by political interests. For purely political reasons, neither the Security Council nor this body has condemned Hamas or its massacre. The audacity of those who invade others and attack civilians to baselessly lecture the law-abiding democracy of Israel on international law is the perfect example of how destructive this institution has become. Listen to this. This week, Russia will be hosting a Hamas delegation in Moscow, and not for the first time. Russia is one of the only places outside of the Middle East where Hamas terrorists and Houthi jihadists are given the red carpet treatment, even after October 7th. Russia is hosting those who are responsible for intentionally murdering babies, raping women, and burning families alive. But this meeting in Moscow is a result of something more broad, more dangerous. Russia is now deepening its ties with global forces of destabilization. It is no secret that Hamas is merely one tentacle of Iran's terror armies. This horde of death and destruction includes Hezbollah, the Houthis, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other terror organizations. They are funded, they are trained, they are armed and directed by Iran. Iran is responsible for the attacks on American service members. Iran is behind the Houthis' attacks on maritime trade, and it is Iran who supplies Russia with the drones that are attacking Ukrainian civilians. As we sit here now, focusing on words and not actions, an alliance is being strengthened and the international community stands idle. The axis between the Ayatollah regime in Tehran, the Assad regime in Syria, the Kim regime in North Korea, and the Maduro regime in Venezuela is deepening, and Russia is moving closer to them. These countries are now standing in solidarity as the free world stands on the sidelines, divided. Do you not see what we all face? Are you not worried about our values and interests? If the UN cannot do anything to prevent aggression, then there is no longer any justification for this organization to exist. If this body is incapable of standing up to violent attacks, yet demonizes those combating the threat posed to all of us, then the UN has lost all legitimacy. Ambassador Kislitsia, Israel will continue to stand by Ukraine. We have both experienced an invasion. We have both experienced brutalities. We will forever bear these scars. Yet, if inaction continues to be the modus operandi of this organization, every other member of the free world will eventually bear these scars too. We, Israel and Ukraine, are the canaries in the coal mine. To the rest of the free world, I say, wake up! Wake up! Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, so you heard what he had to say. How Russia is working to undermine Israel through Israel's enemies. And the reason why they're doing so is because Israel is an ally of the United States. But in the end, folks, in the end, there is going to be a nuclear war. And do not think for a second that once the nuclear war is over, that these European and Russian countries won't, how do I say this, try to one last gasp, one last crusade against Jerusalem. What I want to point out to you is, if you type in the Crusades and what they were all about, what was the Crusades' main goal? Well, were organized by Western European Christians. After centuries of Muslim wars of expansion, their primary objectives was to stop the expansion of Muslim states, to reclaim Christianity, the Holy Land in the Middle East. That's right. So, yes, there is going to be one final crusade by the European countries, whether they have been blasted with nukes or not. And let's see here. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but have power as kings. Now, in the old days, they were kings, but they had their only authority was under the man at the Vatican. Okay. Now today, the kingdoms vary. But these shall have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. And they did. They gave their strength to the man at the Vatican in their crusades. These same countries will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Master of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. So, yeah, so when all these wars break out, and the Gentiles start reducing each other to ashes, in the middle of all of this, Yehoshua is going to come, send the 2 witnesses to gather up all Israel from the 4 corners of the earth to the Holy Land, and these will do one final crusade against the king in Jerusalem. Now, is this the Ezekiel 38-39 war? I think it's after the Ezekiel 38 and 39 war, but I don't know. So, but what I wanted to point out to you today is that the threat by Russia against Israel is real. And as I pointed out to you several videos ago, that the EU are now on their own with their own, how do I say, military they sent their own, under their own mandate in the Red Sea to protect their ships from the Houthis. What I'm saying is they don't view themselves as under the direction, the leadership of the U.S. anymore, and this will continue. The divide between the U.S. and EU is going to continue to divide. For how long, I'm not sure. But, you know, as the elections in Russia has already a predetermined outcome, because there really is no election in Russia, but the election in the United States, on the other hand, is completely divided, and it's going to fragment the United States of America. I do believe it's going to balkanize the United States of America, removing the power and the strength the United States of America has over the EU, and the EU will say, never mind, United States, we've got this, when they don't. But I just wanted to press upon you that Israel views Russia as an immediate threat and danger to their sovereign state. So do not be asleep, as Western nations are, as he accused Western nations of being. Don't be asleep. Wake up. But wake up for a different reason. Be awake, because you know not the day nor the hour that the Son of Man comes.